Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. In this series of video, we are going to see about the question bank with answer set 1 for module 3 for research methodology and intellectual property rights. So your research methodology and intellectual property rights module 3 deals with completely with patents, copyrights and related rights. So moving on into the video, first question. Illustrate in brief about the intellectual property and types of branches in IP. So we all know what is actually IP, intellectual property. The word intellectual itself means there is a creation, innovation happening on some product or some rights or some property. So that is why we call it as intellectual property. So brief about intellectual property, you have to remember the keyword that it is created for created by human intellect for innovative or creative invention. So how do you invent? Where do you invent? Fields of arts, literature, science and trade. So this is a small thing that you can remember, and then you can brief it in a longer way how innovation is done, how creativity is being done by human beings, where all creativity can be done, what is the method of doing the creativity, all those can be explained. And types of branches in IP, you have two branches, one is copyright and related rights, another one is industrial property rights. So here copyright and related rights is nothing but there is an innovation or creativity happening in the field of architecture, that is art and literature, no science and technology. Industrial property rights is nothing but there is a creative thing that is happening which is going to deal with patent, trademarks, geographical indication, trade services, industrial designs, all these comes under industrial property rights. Moving on to the second question, explain how does intellectual property contribute to both economic and cultural development of society, and what role does IP governance play in regulating this development? So coming to the first question, how does intellectual property contribute both to economic and cultural development is, so in economic and cultural development, social development, your intellectual property is one of the biggest thing that is playing the role, because it deals with so much of invention and creativity. It is completely dependent, our social and economic life is dependent on creation. We see so much technology advancement day by day. Yes, so creativity depends on all these. That is economic and social development depends on creativity. So for that there was an agreement called as TRIPS. It is nothing but trade related aspects of intellectual property rights. So this agreement actually banned farmers to store the seeds, all those. It was related to the farming and agriculture, but then what happened is the farmers had the rights to protect their own seeds, their own farming kind of things. So they came up with different acts. So that comes under the role how the IP does governance, what role does IP governance play in regulating development. So to remove this, what they did is the Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers Act. It was in 2021, which was passed in 2021, where the farmers had the rights to store the seeds, sell their seeds, and complete farming was taken care by the particular farmers, by the owners, all those were provided. And also, like IP, even though there is so much of creativity, there is also hazardous that has been impacts that has been created, right? So for that there is also protection that there should be no cloning of human embryos that can be done, and cloning of embryos cannot be patented, cannot be told that it is a creativity. So it has become, the IP has become the integral component of human society. That is what the role that was given for IP in the governance. So there was an act called as DPIIT, that is nothing but Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade. So this was under common commerce and industries, where it depends upon the plant varieties and farmer rights. So there were other councils like technology, information forecasting and assessment, research development cooperation. There were different societies and technology information councils that played a role in IP governance. And this is the one of the important organization that played a very major role, that is World Intellectual Property Organization. Yes. So moving on to the third question, discuss the significance of IP as a global indicator of innovation. So this is the one part of question. So IP as a global indicator, yes, it had an highest innovation index in the nations. So which provided the highest index is the SIMAGO. The SIMAGO was producing the number of research papers, patenters. It had high rank journal papers, high rank patents available. All those was stored in SIMAGO. And the next question is its implication for international competitiveness and collaboration. So the in 1963, first before the era, it was started in states of Greece, and in 1923, Britain has passed an act called as intellectual property legislation. So this carried out with major changes and major advancement. And then by the end of 18th century, almost every country started laying out this IP legislation. So this is the implication and competitiveness that happened. Fourth question, demonstrate the history of IP in India and major amendments that have occurred in IP and acts over time. So history is nothing but when the patent era started. So it is during the British rule, pre-independence. So what was the first act as legislation in India was Act 6 in 1856 was passed, that is was adopted by British patent law. And there were some important amendments. There are many amendments that you have to look upon, like how to provide license, how to protect the license, all those. I am listing out the three main amendments, that is providing the grant for Pakka innovation, that is useful invention, and also increasing the priority time from 6 months to 12 months, that is based on the priority to be published, and then exclusion of importers from the definition of inventor. So these are the three major amendments. Moving to the next question, categorize three phases of copyright and related rights. So there are three phases. First phase is about the concepts of copyrights, which was introduced in 1847, and it enacted about the lifetime of the author, like how the copyrights can be held by the author, what was the time period that can be available, and all those were made mandatory, and that comes under the Enforcement of Rights Act. And second phase was where British enacted the Copyright Act of 1914. So here it was an act that is passed by the UK. And the third phase was about the copyright regimes, which was in post-independence. These all were pre-independence, and third phase was post-independence, where you had an act in 1957 called as Copyright Act. So these are the three phases. And moving on to the next question, explain about the trademarks and related sample design. So we know that trademarks is development of logo or the trade, whatever comes under Trademark Act, which was developed in 1940. That is called as trademarks. So there are some sample designs like semiconductor industry circuits and layout design. So this was the evolving revolutionary in the society, in the world economy. This was growing, and still it is growing. And there is VTU and TRIPS agreement. These are all the agreement and amendments or designs that contributed for major of the trademark designs. And plant varieties, variety of plants based on farming. And TK is nothing but the traditional knowledge. Even the traditional knowledge was carried out with some trademarks, how we were grown, what was the practices done by the people. All those are even called as a trademarks or sample designs. So these are the a list of sample designs. Hope you have understood and it is useful for you. Please be stay tuned for more information. Thank you.